Imagine working a long, exhausting shift, dismissing a quiet customer, only to find out the next day that he owns the very place you work. The Skyline Diner in Austin, Texas, was alive with its usual late-night energy. The scent of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee filled the air, mingling with the hum of conversation and the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Truckers, travelers, and locals filled the booths, their weary faces illuminated by the neon glow from the diner's classic retro signs. For Samantha Lewis, a waitress working the evening shift, it was just another exhausting night. She had been on her feet for hours, taking orders, refilling drinks, and juggling the usual mix of friendly regulars and impatient customers. Her ponytail was starting to come loose, and the creases on her uniform mirrored the weariness settling into her bones. She loved her job, but nights like this made it feel endless. As she wiped down the counter, the diner's bell jingled, signaling a new arrival. She barely glanced up, expecting another road-weary customer grabbing a quick meal before heading back on the highway. Instead, a man in faded jeans, a worn-out hoodie, and scuffed sneakers stepped in, carrying nothing but a leather messenger bag slung over his shoulder. He had an easy, quiet confidence, but nothing about him stood out. Samantha sighed, mentally preparing for another small, tipping late-night guest. She grabbed her notepad, plastering on a polite but tired smile, ready to take his order. What she didn't know was that this man wasn't just any customer. He was Elon Musk, the new owner of Skyline Diner. And by the time the night was over, this encounter would change everything. The man approached the counter with an air of quiet ease, scanning the menu posted on the wall behind Samantha. Unlike most late-night customers who arrived rushed or impatient, he took his time, as if soaking in the atmosphere of the diner. Samantha barely paid him any mind. Another lone traveler, she assumed, grabbing a bite before moving on. After a moment, he finally spoke, his voice calm and even. "What's the cheapest meal you've got?" Samantha glanced at him, suppressing an exhausted sigh. She had spent the night serving demanding customers, and now she was dealing with someone who couldn't even afford a proper meal? Instinctively, she assumed he was short on cash, maybe a drifter passing through town. Without much thought, she responded, "The basic breakfast plate, eggs, toast, and coffee, $5. The man nodded, his expression unreadable. "I'll take it, black coffee, no sugar." Samantha jotted down the order, then hesitated for a moment before adding, "If you're looking for a cheaper place to eat, there's a fast food joint down the street." The words came out more bluntly than she intended, but she was too tired to sugarcoat it. To her surprise, the man simply smiled, not offended, not annoyed, just mildly amused. "This place will do just fine," he said, slipping a crisp $20 bill onto the counter. Samantha blinked, slightly thrown off. Most people ordering the cheapest meal didn't pay with a 20. Still, she shrugged it off, handing him his change and calling his order to the kitchen. As she poured his coffee, she noticed him watching the diner more closely than most guests did. He wasn't glued to his phone or distracted by his observing. She felt a strange, nagging curiosity about him, but quickly brushed it aside. He was just another late-night guest. Or so she thought, because in just a few hours she would come to regret making assumptions about this man and learn a lesson she'd never forget. As Samantha moved on to other customers, the man settled into a corner booth, sipping his black coffee in silence. Unlike most guests who scrolled through their phones or chatted with companions, he simply watched. His gaze wasn't intrusive or restless. It was the kind of quiet observation that took in every detail of the room, every movement of the staff, and every interaction unfolding before him. He noticed the overworked cook in the back, flipping burgers and scrambling eggs with quick, precise movements, barely keeping up with the flood of orders. The busboy, a teenager no older than 17, was struggling to clear tables fast enough, his hands shaking slightly as he stacked dishes in a rush. The cashier yawned between transactions, fatigue written all over her face. And then there was Samantha. The waitress moved with efficiency but little patience. Every interaction was met with polite professionalism, but there was no warmth behind her words. She did her job well, but there was an edge of irritation in her voice, a lack of kindness in her expressions. It wasn't just exhaustion, it was the slow wear of a person who had long stopped seeing the humanity in her customers. At one point, a rookie waiter spilled a tray of drinks near the kitchen entrance. Samantha's frustration flared immediately as she snapped, "Come on, be careful next time. We don't have time for this mess." The young server muttered an apology, his face flushing red with embarrassment as he scrambled to clean up the spill. The man took another slow sip of his coffee, taking note of everything without reaction. But what caught his attention the most was how he himself had been treated. Samantha had barely looked at him when taking his order, had assumed his financial situation, and had subtly suggested he go elsewhere. She hadn't been outright rude, but the message had been clear: he didn't belong. He had seen this before: judgments made based on appearance, courtesy given only when someone seemed important. And yet Samantha had no idea that the man she had dismissed so quickly was not just a customer, but the owner of the very diner she worked in, and soon he would make sure she understood the real value of every interaction. As the night wore on, the diner gradually emptied, leaving only a few lingering customers finishing their meals. Samantha could finally catch her breath. The clock above the counter read 11:45 p.m., just 15 minutes until closing. She exhaled in relief, already picturing herself at home, kicking off her shoes and unwinding with a glass of wine. Just as she began stacking menus and wiping down the counter, the man approached again, carrying the same quiet composure he had earlier. She wasn't in the mood for another long exchange, especially since she had already made it clear that this probably wasn't the place for him. "Would it be possible to reserve a table for tomorrow?" he asked, his voice calm and unhurried. Samantha raised an eyebrow. Reserve a table? For what? People didn't exactly make reservations for a roadside diner. The place ran on a first-come, first-served basis, and most guests were walk-ins looking for a quick bite. Sure," she responded hesitantly, grabbing a notepad. "Any special occasion?" The man shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Not really, I just want to make sure I have a spot." Something about his tone felt off. Not suspicious, just deliberate. Samantha frowned slightly, but she went ahead and noted down his name for the reservation anyway. Then, before she could stop herself, she let out a small chuckle. "You sure this is the kind of place you want a reservation for?" Her words were laced with subtle condescension, the assumption still lingering that he might be better off eating elsewhere. The man gave her a small, knowing smile. "Yeah," he said simply, "I'm sure." Samantha shrugged, uninterested in prying further. He'd be back tomorrow, but honestly, she didn't care why. As far as she was concerned, he was just a peculiar late-night guest. As he walked toward the exit, she caught him taking one last glance around the diner. His eyes scanned the staff, the seating arrangements, even the faded sign hanging above the door. There was something in the way he looked at the place, as if he wasn't just seeing a diner, but evaluating something much bigger. Samantha dismissed it as nothing. But by the next morning, she would realize just how wrong she had been. The next morning, Samantha arrived at Skyline Diner feeling groggy but ready for another routine shift. The breakfast rush had already begun, with regulars filling the booths and coffee pots brewing in steady rotation. Everything felt as normal as ever. Until she heard an unusual announcement. "All staff, please report to the break room immediately for a mandatory meeting." Samantha frowned, exchanging confused glances with a few of her co-workers. Mandatory meetings weren't common, and they were never held during peak hours. Something felt off. As she made her way to the back, she spotted Mike Hendricks, the general manager, standing by the door, looking unusually formal. He wasn't alone. Beside him stood the man from last night, the same quiet customer in the faded hoodie and jeans. Only now he wasn't wearing a hoodie, he was dressed in a sharp, tailored suit, his entire presence exuding confidence and authority. Samantha stopped mid-step, her stomach twisting into knots as realization began to creep in. Mike cleared his throat and addressed the staff. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce you to the new owner of Skyline Diner, Mr. Elon Musk." The room fell into complete silence. Samantha's breath hitched. "Owner? Elon Musk?" The name sounded surreal in this setting, completely at odds with the image of the unassuming man she had dismissed the night before. Her mind replayed every interaction, the way she had treated him like just another struggling customer, the suggestion that he go elsewhere, the subtle condescension when he asked for a reservation. Elon stepped forward, hands clasped loosely in front of him, scanning the faces in the room with a calm but knowing expression. "I've always believed that the best way to understand a place is to experience it firsthand," he said. "So last night I came here not as an owner, but as a customer." A murmur rippled through the staff, and Samantha could feel the weight of unspoken words pressing down on her. "What I saw was a hard-working team," Musk continued, "people putting in long hours to keep this place running. But I also saw moments that reminded me why attention to detail and kindness matter so much in this industry." He didn't look directly at her, but she knew. She knew. Her heart pounded as his words sank in. She had judged him too quickly, made assumptions based on appearance, and now the realization burned. And though he didn't single her out, the lesson was loud and clear. The room remained eerily silent, the weight of Elon Musk's words settling over the staff like a heavy fog. Samantha's pulse pounded in her ears, her throat dry as she realized the full gravity of the situation. He had seen everything. Every impatient glance, every judgmental assumption, every dismissive remark. The small moments she had brushed off as routine were now glaring mistakes. Elon's expression remained calm but firm as he continued. "In places like this, it's easy to assume who people are just by looking at them. But the truth is, you never really know who's sitting at your counter or walking through your doors." Samantha swallowed hard, the words cutting deeper than she expected. Last night she had done exactly that. Assumed. Assumed he was just another penny-pinching customer. Assumed he wasn't worth much of her time. Assumed she knew his story before even giving him a chance. "Kindness doesn't cost anything," Elon went on, "but the way we treat people can define their experience, and ours. Whether it's a businessman in a suit or a traveler in worn-out clothes, everyone deserves respect." His words weren't just for Samantha. They were for everyone in the room. She could sense the shift in the atmosphere. The younger waiters fidgeted uncomfortably, realizing their own moments of impatience. The cooks, the busboys, even the manager, each of them was reflecting on how they had treated customers in the past. Samantha wanted to sink into the floor. She felt exposed, like every judgment she had made was on display for the world to see. And yet, Elon wasn't angry. He wasn't calling her out by name or shaming her in front of the team. Instead, he was giving them all a chance to do better. "This diner has potential," he said, glancing around. "And so do all of you. I'm here to make improvements, not just to the menu or the seating, but to how we treat every single person who walks through these doors." A wave of understanding rippled through the team. Samantha, however, felt something more: regret. She wished she could take back her words, her tone, her assumptions. Elon Musk had given them all a lesson they wouldn't forget. And for Samantha, it wasn't just about the job anymore, it was about the kind of person she wanted to be. As the meeting ended, the staff slowly dispersed, murmuring amongst themselves, but Samantha remained frozen in place, her mind still reeling. She had spent the last few years of her life going through the motions, treating her job as just another paycheck and her customers as just another wave of faces. Now, she saw everything differently. She replayed last night's encounter over and over. The assumptions she made, the impatience in her voice, the way she subtly pushed him away. If she had known, would she have treated him differently? The thought made her stomach twist, because the truth was, she should have treated him better, regardless. A few hours later, as the lunch rush slowed, Samantha noticed Elon Musk sitting at the same counter where he had sat the night before. He wasn't making a scene or drawing attention, he was simply having a meal, observing quietly once again. Taking a deep breath, Samantha gathered her courage and approached him, her hands slightly trembling. "Mr. Musk?" she said hesitantly. He looked up, his expression calm but attentive. "I just wanted to say..." I'm sorry for how I treated you last night." Elon studied her for a moment, then offered a small, knowing smile. "No hard feelings," he said. "The best lessons come from experience." Samantha let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. It wasn't a dismissal. It wasn't an excuse. It was a challenge. A chance to prove, to herself more than anyone, that she had learned something valuable. "Thank you," she said sincerely. Before she walked away, Elon reached for his receipt, pulled out a pen and wrote something on the back. He left a generous tip and a short note. "Keep up the great work." As Samantha picked up the receipt, she realized that this wasn't just a lesson in customer service. It was a lesson in life. Every person mattered, every interaction counted, and from that day forward, she would never forget it. Weeks passed, but the lesson from that night never left Samantha. Every time she stepped behind the counter, every time she greeted a customer, she remembered Elon Musk's quiet observation, his calm reaction, and the weight of his words. It wasn't about status or power. It was about respect, about seeing people for who they were rather than what they appeared to be. She started to approach her job differently. Instead of simply taking orders and rushing through her shift, she made an effort to engage with customers, to offer genuine kindness instead of forced politeness. And the change was noticeable, not just in how guests responded, but in how she felt about her work. Her coworkers picked up on it too. The once exhausted staff seemed lighter, more patient. The rookie waiter she had snapped at the night of Musk's visit was more confident now, no longer afraid of making mistakes. Even the kitchen staff, always under pressure, felt the shift in energy. The diner had become more than just a job. It felt like a place where people mattered. One evening, as Samantha wiped down the counter, the diner's bell jingled. A man in tattered clothing hesitated at the entrance, clearly unsure if he was welcome. Months ago, she might have instinctively judged him, assumed he would take up space, or that he wouldn't leave a good tip. Instead, she smiled warmly and gestured to an open seat. "Welcome in. Can I get you some coffee?" The man's face lit up with relief, and for the first time, Samantha fully understood what had changed. Not just in how she worked, but in how she saw people. Every guest mattered, no matter who they were. And it all started with a lesson she learned from the most unexpected teacher, a man in a hoodie who owned the very diner she worked in. Samantha's story is a powerful reminder that kindness and respect should never be reserved only for those who appear important. It's easy to judge others based on appearance, to assume who they are, what they can afford, or whether they deserve our time, but as she learned, every interaction matters, because we never truly know who we are speaking to or what they might be going through. Her encounter with Elon Musk, disguised as an ordinary customer, taught her a lesson she would never forget. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. The way we treat people, whether they are in tattered clothes or a tailored suit, reflects more about our character than theirs. Beyond that, Samantha discovered that small moments of kindness can transform an entire environment. When she changed her attitude, the energy of the diner changed too. Coworkers became more patient, customers felt more welcome, and the job itself became more meaningful. This story teaches us that status should never determine how we treat others. Whether someone is a billionaire in disguise or a struggling worker, the truth remains the same. Kindness costs nothing, but its impact can last a lifetime.